The winter came early to Silver Ridge Reserve, and it came like a verdict. Snow did not simply fall here, it buried. It filled the narrow ravines, smothered the black pines, and laid a white shroud over every trail the animals had known for generations. The streams that once slipped quietly between rocks froze solid, so still and clear they looked like glass laid over the bones of the earth. High on a ridgeline, a lone gray wolf moved against the wind. Her name, given by the scientists who tracked her, was Luna. Once, she had not walked alone. She had led a pack, strong and sure-footed, a family of hunters who knew every fold of this mountain. They had denned in a sheltered hollow beneath a leaning spruce, raised pups there, taught them to listen to the whisper of snow and the rumble of distant rock. All of that was gone now. It had happened fast, faster than any disaster in a human town. Faster than a house can be lost for foreclosure, faster than a family can fall apart under the weight of medical bills or credit card debt. One moment there had been hunger, but also warmth and movement, the small squeaks of new life in the den. The next moment, there had been the crack of a distant rifle, the panicked flight of elk, and then the deep, sickening roar of snow letting go. The avalanche had torn down a side of the mountain that had not slid in living memory. It rolled over trees and stones, over fresh tracks and old trails, and over the narrow entrance to Luna's den. By the time the white clouds settled and the echoes died, the hollow where her family had been was a buried memory beneath tons of frozen weight. She had dug until her paws bled. For hours, she clawed at the packed snow, nose pressed to the ice, catching ghost scents of her pups trapped far below. No life insurance policy could be taken out on them, no home insurance to rebuild what the mountain had taken. There was only her body and the snow, her grief and the silence. When at last her strength failed and her paws could scrape no more, Luna staggered away from the mound, leaving behind not only her family, but the last solid piece of the world she understood. Since that day, she had wandered. Her collar sent steady signals to the satellites above, and in a small cabin at the edge of the reserve, Dr. Emily Carter watched the little blinking dot on her screen with growing concern. Emily had spent years studying wolves, learning their habits, their roots, their complex loyalties. They were social creatures who lived and died by the pack. A wolf without a pack, especially a female who had lost her young, was like a person stripped of community, stripped of support, trying to face retirement planning with no savings, no safety net, nothing to lean on but habit and the thin hope of tomorrow. Luna's paths told a story of restless despair. She no longer followed the old hunting routes along the lower meadows where deer once grazed. Instead, she moved in ragged circles, climbing one ridge only to descend into another valley, pausing now and then to lift her head and send a long, low howl out into the frozen emptiness. No answer ever came. The mountains gave her voice back to her, thinner and lonelier, as if even the echo were too tired to stay. Nights on Silver Ridge were long that winter. The stars felt closer, sharp points of cold light above a world that had forgotten warmth. Luna curled alone under scrub branches or against fallen logs, her thick coat rimed with frost. The wind combed through her fur as if searching for the pups that used to sleep against her belly. Sometimes, when the moon was full and the snow caught its light, she would stand still and look up, golden eyes reflecting pale silver back to the sky. If you're listening to this now, somewhere warm, maybe with a cup of tea in your hands and a roof over your head, it might be hard to imagine that kind of emptiness. Yet that's what we come here for, to whispering hearts, to sit quietly with stories that remind us of love, loss, and the stubborn courage to keep going. If you find comfort in walking alongside Luna on this cold mountain, you're welcome to stay with us, to subscribe and keep sharing these quiet moments where wild lives and human hearts meet. Down in the cabin, Emily leaned closer to the screen as Luna's signal drifted farther than usual. The wolf was moving toward a part of the reserve still scarred by last summer's wildfire, a place where charred trunks stuck out of the snow like blackened fingers. Very few animals went that way now. There was little shelter, less food, and memories of smoke still clung to the soil. "Where are you going, girl?" Emily murmured to herself, tapping the coordinates. She wrote in her notes that Luna's movement pattern had changed. Longer distances, less rest, more crossings of steep, dangerous slopes. For a human, it would have been like watching someone drive through one storm after another, without stopping to refuel, without checking their health insurance or the weather report, just pushing onward as if the destination didn't matter. But for Luna, something did. Somewhere beneath the grief, beneath the exhaustion that had settled into her bones, there was still a spark of instinct that refused to go out. Hunger tugged at her. The need for water and shelter drove her paws forward. Each breath puffed into the air and froze, then vanished. But still she moved. That night, as another storm rolled in from the west and the mountain braced itself for fresh snow, Luna slipped into the burned forest. The wind here smelled different, tinged with old ash and something else. Faint, almost lost in the cold. She paused, head tilted, ears pricked. The world held its breath with her. Then from somewhere among the blackened trunks and drifts of snow, she heard it. A thin, broken sound, barely more than a whimper, the kind of fragile cry that should not have survived this winter at all. Luna took a step toward it, then another, her heart pounding in a chest that had thought it had nothing left to lose. Luna moved deeper into the burned forest, where the snow lay in uneven pockets and the trees stood like pillars of coal. The cry she had heard faded into the wind, leaving her unsure whether she had imagined it, a phantom sound from a heart that still ached for pups that would never return. But something kept her walking, instinct perhaps, or something older and harder to name. For days now, she had hunted alone and eaten little. Her ribs showed beneath her thick winter coat. A wolf without a pack rarely survived long in the wild. Emily Carter knew this better than anyone. From her cabin office, she watched Luna's tracker drift across the digital map, tracing long, ragged lines through territory that did not welcome life. Emily leaned back, rubbing the tiredness from her eyes. She had spent her career studying the bond between wolves, how their loyalty kept them alive through seasons that would break other predators. Lone wolves, especially females who had lost their young, often entered what Emily quietly called the fading. They wandered until hunger, cold, or injury claimed them. She wrote detailed notes for a field report, the kind of documentation that sometimes helped secure grants or wildlife protection funding. Conservation in America was expensive, much like healthcare or home insurance. Necessary, but always just one denied request away from collapse. Outside the cabin, the wind rattled the frost-stiffed branches. Emily checked the live camera feeds. It was there, at the edge of the burn zone, that she saw Luna pause beside a fallen log and lower her head. Emily frowned. Luna had found something. Back in the forest, Luna sniffed the air again. The faint cry returned, thin, breathless, but real. She stepped around scorched roots, pushing her way to a shallow depression in the snow. And there, curled against the remains of a charred trunk, was a small, spotted body. A leopard cub, no more than a few weeks old, trembling in a patch of icy wind. The cub lifted its head. Its eyes, blue-gray and clouded with exhaustion, blinked slowly at Luna. Its breath made small clouds in the air, as faint as a whispered prayer. Luna's heartbeat quickened. This was no lost pup. This was a rival species, one that would grow into a powerful hunter. Instinct told her what must happen next. A meal like this could keep her alive for days, maybe long enough to find safer hunting ground. But the cub wasn't crying from fear now. It was crying from abandonment, and Luna knew that pain too well. The cub reached out, not with claws, but with something like hope. Its tiny paw tapped Luna's chest, weak and searching, the same way her own pups once did when they wanted warmth. The memory cut deeper than any wolf's teeth. Luna looked away, squeezing her eyes shut, fighting a wild confusion inside her.
Nature did not allow mistakes like this. A wolf raising a leopard was like a personal injury lawyer defending the hunter who had shot them. Unthinkable, a violation of every unwritten law of the wild. But when Luna opened her eyes again, the cub had lowered its head, waiting, trusting. Something broke open inside her. She nudged the cub gently, feeling the tremble in his small body. Then she lowered herself so he could press against her for warmth. The cub let out a sound halfway between a sigh and a purr. Miles away, Emily sat stunned at her monitor. Wolves sometimes adopt orphan pups from their own species. But this was something no textbook, no conservation lecture, no wildlife attorney advocating habitat rights could explain. "This can't be happening," she whispered, yet she couldn't look away. Luna turned, lifting the cub carefully in her jaws, not the killing grip, but the carrying grip of a mother. She began walking toward an outcrop where the wind was smaller and the snow gathered shallow, a place to rest, at least for tonight. Emily zoomed the camera, heart pounding. "Where are you taking him?" she murmured, as if Luna might answer. The snow thickened, falling in slow spirals around the wolf and the cub she should have left behind. Above them, the mountain loomed, its silence deep and ancient. Luna did not look back, and somewhere in that forest, the laws of predator and prey quietly shifted.
The storm eased by morning, leaving a dim, blue-gray light over the burned forest. Luna lay curled around the cub, sharing what warmth she had left. The little leopard's breathing was shallow, fragile. Each rise of his ribs seemed like a negotiation with the cold. He was not built for this brutal winter. Even Luna, bred for snow and wind, struggled to survive it. Yet she had chosen him. Or maybe the choosing had happened long before she reached him, in the silence of her grief. The cub's eyes blinked open, still cloudy, still weak, but searching. Luna lowered her muzzle and let him press against her throat, where her heartbeat lived. He was hungry, too hungry. She had no milk to give, not enough nourishment remained in her body. He needed meat, warm and rich, the kind of food Luna had once brought to her pups. She could not leave him for long, or the cold would claim him. She rose, hesitant, testing the air for prey. The forest smelled of ash, ice, and a distant herd of elk moving down valley. Too far, too dangerous. A lone wolf could not bring down prey like that, not in her condition. She needed something smaller, something she could kill swiftly and return before the cub's life slipped away. Luna trotted into the skeletal trees, paws whispering over crusted snow. Beneath a half-burned pine, she found faint tracks of a snowshoe hare. She followed the trail, and when the wind stilled, she heard it, the soft, rhythmic nibbling that betrayed life. The hunt was quick. Luna lunged, felt fur and bone in her jaws, and the forest went silent again. She carried the small rabbit back to the cub, dropping it gently beside him. He sniffed at the meat. Confused at first, then driven by instinct, he sank tiny teeth into a warm patch. Luna watched him eat, the tension in her chest easing with every swallow he managed. Far away, Emily Carter typed furiously into her field log. Unprecedented behavior continues. Wolf sharing kill with leopard cub. She paused, staring at her own words. It read like a mistake, something that would be challenged in any scientific review. Yet, there it was on her screen, Luna's GPS coordinates and camera capture confirming what she was documenting. If this story ever reached the public, Emily thought, it would change everything. Wildlife conservation funding, endangered species protections, even habitat laws. Some private conservation groups, often supported by large financial institutions and life insurance corporations, had begun shifting investment models to preserve apex predators. But this? A wolf raising a leopard? It was something no investor, no policymaker had ever imagined. Emily clicked open a secure backup folder. If anything happened to Luna or the cub, she needed this data preserved. Meanwhile, in the forest, the cub finished eating and curled against Luna, warmer now, eyes drifting shut. The sunlight, faint as it was, found patches of gold in his fading spots. Luna watched him sleep. In the stillness, she could almost pretend she felt her own pups there beside him, tiny bodies that once nestled under her chin. But memory was a dangerous refuge. She lowered her head, pushing the thought away. The cub stirred, letting out a faint sound, less a cry this time, more a breathy mewl that tugged at something deep in Luna's ribs. She nosed him gently. If Luna had belonged to a pack, the others might have helped raise him. Wolves shared responsibility, shared warmth. But Luna had no such support. She was a wolf whose world had ended, and this cub might be the only living bond she still had to offer her heart. The wind shifted. Luna lifted her head, ears turning sharply. A new scent rode the cold, musky, heavy, and close. Not prey, not the ghost smoke of the burned trees. Cats, adult leopards. The cub was not only abandoned, he was hunted. Luna stood over him, hackles lifting. If the leopards returned and found her here, they would kill her first and take the cub second. She didn't know why they had left him, injury, panic, or desperation. But if they came back, they would not tolerate a wolf guarding one of their own. The snow crunched, a branch snapped. Luna lowered herself protectively over the cub. But it wasn't a leopard. A cougar stepped into view. Muscles rippling beneath tawny fur, eyes fixed on Luna and the tiny life she sheltered. It had smelled the kill, the blood on the snow. Hunger burned in its gaze. Luna bared her teeth. The cub whimpered. And far above, on a ridge Emily was preparing to visit soon, the first camera drone lifted into the sky, its blades slicing the cold air, unaware that history was about to turn, not by science, but by instinct. The forest held its breath. The cub trembled beneath Luna's chest. The predator took a step forward, and Luna, alone and unafraid, prepared to do the unthinkable again. The cougar stepped closer, its paws silent against the snow, its breath a thin curl of steam in the morning air. Luna stood her ground, body low, teeth bared. The leopard cub trembled beneath her chest, trying to disappear into her thick fur. The cougar was larger than Luna, heavier, and in far better condition. A single swipe of its paw could end the strange experiment of nature before it ever truly began. The cougar growled, not a warning, but a promise. Luna answered with a deep rumble, pulling every ounce of strength left inside her. The cub shifted, letting out a thin cry. That sound changed something in Luna's stance. She was no longer a starving wolf fighting over a carcass. She was a mother again. The cougar lunged. Luna moved before she had time to think, throwing her body sideways and forcing the cub beneath a fallen log. She spun, snapping her jaws at the cougar's throat. The cat recoiled, surprised by the ferocity, and they collided in an explosion of snow and ice. Teeth scraped fur, claws found flesh. Luna felt pain split across her shoulder, but she didn't back down. Another charge. The cougar pinned her, jaws opening wide. Luna twisted and sank her teeth deep into its foreleg. That was enough. The cougar yelped, dragged its leg free, backing away with a snarl. A moment stretched between them, long and cold. Then the cat turned and vanished into the burned trees. The forest grew quiet again, Luna stood shaking, blood dripping from her shoulder into the snow. She limped back to the log and nudged the cub out. He pressed his face into her chest, and she allowed herself one slow breath of relief. She had done something wolves do not do. She had risked her life for a predator of another kind, a creature who might one day threaten her world. But she had made her decision. She would protect him, no matter what the mountain demanded in return. Miles away, Emily Carter stared at the live feed, stunned. Wolves defending young that were not their own was rare but known. A wolf defending a leopard cub was something entirely different. She could already imagine the backlash from traditional wildlife committees, the legal debates over conservation funding and insurance for protected species programs. Some legislators argued that predators should not be preserved at all, especially when livestock losses drove ranchers to bankruptcy. Others, including attorneys working in environmental law and animal protection, fought to expand protected regions. But none of their laws imagined this. Emily picked up her phone and recorded a quick field memo. If Luna continues caring for the cub, this could redefine maternal behavior across apex predators. We may need to propose emergency rehabilitation funding or a wildlife rehab loan to protect this area. We cannot lose this pair. Meanwhile, Luna's body weakened. She needed food and warmth for the cub and for herself. Her wounds stung with every movement, but she pressed on. She carried the cub higher into the ridge, where wind-carved stone formed a shallow cave. It was small, but it was shelter. She cleaned the cub's fur, then cleaned her own wound as best she could. The cub pressed close, tiny heartbeat fluttering against her ribs. Night returned like a heavy curtain, drawing darkness over the forest. Luna fought sleep, listening for the cougar's return or the leopards who might come searching for the cub. The winter air slipped into the cave, cold enough to steal breath. Yet the cub slept, his nose tucked under Luna's jaw. Something was changing in him, in the way he listened to the wind, in the way he mirrored her breathing. He did not understand that he was a different species from the body keeping him alive. He understood only warmth, safety, and a heartbeat beneath his cheek. Emily monitored them through the night, whispering into the dim glow of her equipment, as if speaking to the mountain itself. Hold them safe, just a little longer. Before dawn, Luna arose to hunt again. She would feed him first, always first. And somewhere in the burned forest, the laws of nature continued to bend, not by force, but by love. If you're listening to this story and want to keep following Luna and the cub through the wild heart of Silver Ridge, you can join us here at Whispering Hearts. Stories like this remind us that even in a world of contracts, insurance policies, attorneys, and complicated human struggles, there are still places where life finds a way to begin again. And Luna, though she did not know it, had already changed everything.
The storm broke over Silver Ridge with a rage that felt almost personal. Wind tearing through scorched pines, snow swirling like ash reborn from the summer's wildfire. Luna pushed forward anyway, leaving the cub tucked deep inside the cave. He cried for her, a thin and trembling sound, but hunger was a louder demand. If she failed to hunt, the cub would not survive another night. She tracked the faintest scent of mule deer through the storm. Her shoulder burned where the cougar's claws had torn into her, and every step sent pain down her front leg. But she kept moving, kept fighting. A mother's determination had reshaped her instincts beyond logic, beyond species. The world might call it unnatural, but hunger did not care about rules. Far below the ridge, Emily watched a fresh alert blink across her tablet. Luna's GPS collar hadn't moved in minutes. She leaned closer to the screen, worried. If the wolf collapsed from exhaustion or infection, the cub would be left alone again. Emily whispered, "Come on, girl, keep going." The deer trail ended near a frozen creek.
Luna lowered herself into the snow, waiting, breath shallow, eyes fixed on a shadow moving between the trees. One young deer stepped forward, unaware of the predator crouched only yards away. Luna lunged, not with the perfect timing of a strong wolf, but with desperate strength. The chase was brutal, short, and punishing. When it was over, Luna stood shaking, chest heaving, but victorious. She fed only enough to regain strength, leaving most of the carcass for the cub. It wasn't instinctive behavior, it was a choice, a sacrifice. Hours later, she dragged what remained of the deer back to the cave. The cub stumbled toward the smell, crying, soft and broken, and Luna gently nudged the meat close. His tiny teeth were still weak, but he ate as she stood guard at the cave entrance, listening to the storm roar like a living beast. Emily exhaled when she saw the cub eat through the live stream. She made a note for her report. Wolf prioritizes feeding of leopard cub over self-sustenance. Maternal behavior now proven beyond typical instinct. She wondered how this would change conservation funding, wildlife insurance programs, even the way lawmakers thought about predator protection. Some ranchers wanted more government support, not unlike people searching for better car insurance or home security systems to protect what mattered most to them. Maybe the wilderness deserved its own version of protection too. The cub finished eating and collapsed beside Luna, full for the first time in days. She cleaned the snow from his fur, then rested her head across his back. His purring rose and fell like a heartbeat. Outside, the storm began to soften. For a long time, neither moved. Luna watched the mouth of the cave, alert even in exhaustion, guarding a child who did not share her blood, her nature, or her future. And yet something invisible tied them together, something older than instinct and stronger than fear. Emily spoke softly into her camera log, her voice carried by static and wind. Love isn't just a human word. It's a wilderness law we don't understand yet. By morning, the storm had passed. A thin beam of sunlight reached inside the cave, touching Luna's face, then the cub's. He stretched, blinked, and pressed his head under her chin. She answered with a low rumble, a promise renewed. They would face the ridge again soon, but today they had survived, and survival was the first miracle.
The days after the storm settled into a fragile rhythm. The cub, now stronger, heavier, and curious beyond reason, no longer trembled with every gust of wind. Luna watched him test his paws against the cave's stone, pouncing on shadows only he could see. His coordination was clumsy, but there was something unmistakable in the way he moved, a spark of a hunter, not a wolf, not yet a leopard, but a creature learning to belong to two worlds at once. Emily saw it too through the remote cameras. The footage startled her more than she expected. Those early instinctive swipes of the cub's paws were precise, feline, and powerful. She recorded a voice note for the research team. Leopard cub showing development of natural predatory reflexes despite wolf-led upbringing. This is behavioral evolution in real time. Her voice trembled slightly. She knew what discoveries like this meant. Conservation grants, federal wildlife protection hearings, debates that would involve lawyers, lobbyists, and experts in environmental law and animal rights legislation. Nature, somehow, had become evidence. Luna began taking the cub with her to the ridge at dawn. The snow had thinned, revealing earth and broken grass beneath. She kept him close, nudging him back when he pushed too far ahead, yet never discouraging his curiosity. The cub sniffed everything: fallen logs, fox tracks, a feather blown from the valley. The world had hurt him once, but he approached it with wonder rather than fear. At the creek, Luna showed him how to drink. He copied her, lowering his head awkwardly, letting the cold water touch his tongue before swallowing. Then something shifted.
His eyes narrowed and his body lowered into a crouch. A rabbit moved near a patch of brambles. The cub tensed, every muscle ready to spring. Emily sat forward in her chair, breath held. The cub leapt. It was not a perfect strike. The rabbit escaped into the brush, but Luna didn't show disappointment. Instead, she brushed her head along his back, offering the encouragement only a mother could give. The cub blinked, confused but proud. Something ancient had awakened inside him. Later, as they rested beneath a fallen spruce, Luna pushed a small bone toward him. He rolled it with his paw, biting at it, learning how teeth were tools for more than milk and survival. They were power. Emily wrote again in her field log, predatory identity emerging, wolf guidance, leopard instinct, adaptation without conflict. That night, the wind returned. Luna and the cub curled together, and Emily monitored the cave from her small cabin in the foothills. A news banner scrolled across her screen. Wildlife collisions on rural highways increasing. Drivers were being urged to review their car insurance coverage, especially those who lived close to protected habitats. Emily sighed. Humans feared what animals might do to their cars, while an entire miracle was unfolding on a snowy ridge, unseen and misunderstood. The cub fell asleep with one paw on Luna's leg, his breathing deep, his belly full. She watched him with a tenderness no textbook on predator behavior had ever prepared the world for. Outside, a distant howl rose across the ridge, long, lonely, searching. Luna did not answer. Her world was here now, with the cub who should have been her rival. The cub who was becoming something new, something the wild had never written into its laws. And deep in the dark, the first true thought of a hunter formed like a flame in the little leopard's mind. One day, I will run these ridges too. The thaw came slowly. Snowmelts carved small, silver rivers down the ridge, and the evergreen branches shook off their white burden. Luna moved more easily now, her limp nearly gone, and the cub, growing fast, followed her with a confidence that had not existed weeks before. But spring brought more than warmth. It brought movement, and with it, danger. They smelled the pack before they saw it. Luna froze at the mouth of the clearing, fur stiffening along her back. The cub, startled, pressed against her shoulder, confused by the sudden shift in her breathing. It was a scent he did not know, but Luna had known it all her life. These were the wolves she had once run beside, the pack she had been forced to abandon when she carried the wounds of failure and loss. Emily watched from her cabin, heart quickening as she recognized shapes through the drone's camera feed. 5 wolves, strong, lean, moving with the certainty of animals who hunted together. She spoke quietly into her recorder. Former pack entering Luna's hunting range. Potential conflict. Cub must be protected. From the trees, a massive gray wolf stepped into view. His tail held high, his eyes sharp as broken glass. Magnus, the new alpha, the one who had exiled her. Luna placed herself in front of the cub, body low, teeth bared. The cub didn't understand the ritual of pack confrontation, but instinct told him enough. This was not a time for play, shadows, or bones. This was something older than memory, older even than fear. Magnus approached, sniffing the air. He saw the cub, a snarl twisted through his muzzle, not of confusion, but offense. A wolf raising a leopard. This was a fracture in wild law. Nature had rules, and Luna had broken them. A younger wolf, Aspen, once had been Luna's favorite in the pack. A fast learner, a loyal follower. Now his ears flattened, and he growled a warning. The cub answered with a sound that surprised even him. a rumbling feline warning buried deep in his small chest. Emily whispered, "Easy. Stay back, Luna." But Luna didn't move, not 1 inch. This moment was not about survival. It was about identity, about the line she had crossed when she carried home a dying cub instead of leaving him to the snow. Magnus lunged first. Luna met him head-on, the impact echoing through the clearing. The cub leapt aside but refused to run. Aspen tried to flank Luna, and with a speed none of the wolves expected, the cub sprang between them, claws catching Aspen's shoulder. It was not a deep wound, but enough to shock every wolf present. The pack recoiled. Predator, yes, but not prey. A message written in teeth. Luna stood over the cub, chest heaving, blood at the corner of her mouth. Magnus paced, calculating. A fight would cost him more than pride. Spring was lean, and a wounded alpha could lose everything. After a long, dangerous pause, he huffed sharply, turned, and led the pack away into the pines. The clearing fell silent. Emily sagged back in her chair, exhaling shakily. She knew animal behavior, but this was something else. Something that would change her field reports, her funding proposals, maybe even how environmental attorneys argued for wildlife protection in upcoming legislation. This wasn't just instinct, it was family. Luna nudged the cub gently, checking him for injuries. He shook himself, insulted more than hurt, and pressed his forehead against her jaw. She licked his ears, a reassurance that the world was wide and wild, but he would never face it alone. Night fell, and they returned to the cave. The cub curled against her, silent, thinking. He had seen wolves like him, yet not like him. He had seen what belonging looked like and what exile cost. Somewhere along the ridge, Magnus howled, calling his pack, declaring his dominance. Luna did not answer. The cub closed his eyes. His dreams were full of snow and pine, of wolf teeth and leopard claws, and a truth shaping itself quietly in the dark. He would not choose to be one or the other. He would become something new.
Summer settled over Silver Ridge like a long exhale. The snow had vanished from the pines, and the air tasted of warm sap and river stones. Each sunrise revealed new strength in the cub, his paws wider, his body longer, muscles forming beneath his growing coat. Luna watched him stretch each morning, a quiet pride rising inside her. He was no longer a fragile creature fighting for every breath. He was becoming himself. Yet the memory of the pack's return never left her. She changed the routines, teaching him to move at night, to blend into darkness, not as a wolf did, but as a shadow. Hunting now was not only about food, but survival. Silence became their shared language. Emily, tracking them from her field station, saw the transformation unfold in real time. She scribbled notes for the research council, uncertain how to describe what she was seeing. Wolf-raised leopard exhibits hybrid predatory strategy, stealth comparable to cougar, endurance similar to wolf. The data could change everything. It might even reshape federal conservation programs. She imagined long tables, policy debates, and the involvement of environmental attorneys arguing over habitat rights. A strange thought crossed her mind. Nature didn't have lawyers, yet it fought harder than any courtroom ever had. One night, while the sky burned with stars, Luna led the cub to the valley's edge. Below, a herd of elk grazed in the moonlight. The cub crouched lower, every nerve alert.
Instinct told him to charge alone. Luna's low growl told him to wait. Patience, strategy. Wolves hunted with plans. He watched the herd shift, noticing how one injured elk favored its left leg. Luna touched her muzzle to the cub's shoulder, showing him the target. Understanding came like lightning. They descended the ridge, silent, fluid, a pair bound not by blood, but by a pact older than language. The chase was swift. The elk tried to flee but stumbled. The cub lunged, Luna beside him, and when it was done, he tasted his first true victory. Not scraps, not leftovers, a hunt he had earned. Emily covered her mouth when she saw it through the night vision camera. She whispered, "He's becoming a predator of two worlds." The cub stood over the elk, chest rising with the thrill of strength discovered. Luna did not feed until he had eaten first. Only when he lay in the grass breathing deeply did she share the kill. It was a lesson without words. Power means responsibility. Survival means sharing. The next morning, they rested beneath cedar branches. The cub felt something change inside him. A boundary crossed. He wasn't simply Luna's adopted young anymore. He was a force growing in silence. But silence rarely lasts in the wild. Later that week, distant voices echoed across the ridge. Humans trekking deeper into the wilderness than usual. Emily saw them on her satellite feed. Hikers, loud and careless, stepping through restricted land posted with warnings. She knew the risks: animal encounters, injury, and costly rescue operations. It reminded her of the way people never checked health insurance or mortgage protection until disaster struck. Humans and wild creatures weren't so different after all. Luna heard the hikers before Emily could send a drone closer. She lifted her head sharply, body tensing. The cub watched her, waiting for direction. Something in her scent told him this danger was like the pack, but worse. Wolves respected territory. Humans didn't. They moved higher into the ridge, deeper into the trees. The hikers never saw them, but the cub learned something new that night. There were predators who did not hunt with claws, but with noise and machines and ignorance. Creatures who did not smell like the forest, and yet moved through it as if it belonged to them. When they reached the cave again, Luna settled down, and the cub curled near her side. Sleep came slowly. His dreams were filled with elk and moonlight, but also with voices, human and unfamiliar. The ridge had changed again. Victory had made him stronger, but new dangers were arriving, dangers he could neither outrun nor bite. And if the world kept pushing toward the cave, one truth would become impossible to ignore. To protect his mother, he might one day have to reveal the strength she had given him, a strength the world had never seen before.
The wind returned to Silver Ridge with the sharp scent of coming frost. Luna and the young leopard had just finished feeding when the air shifted, silent, tense, the kind of change the wild always sensed before danger. The cub lifted his head first, whiskers trembling. Luna followed, ears pricked, staring toward the dark timberline as if an invisible line had been crossed. A wolf's howl rose across the ridge. Not Magnus this time, but a younger voice, desperate and thin. The cub stiffened, tail low. He remembered teeth, snarls, exile. But this howl was different. It wasn't a threat. It was an alarm. Emily checked the live camera feed and froze. A lone wolf stumbled along the ridge, ribs showing, limping, leaving drops of blood across the snow-frosted earth. She recognized him. Aspen, the wolf the cub had clawed in their last encounter. Something had gone terribly wrong. She grabbed her radio, whispering, possible injury from traps or poachers. Human activity increasing. Her voice shook. She knew too well what traps meant. Pain, lawsuits, wildlife reports,
and sometimes compensation cases handled by animal attack lawyers or insurance adjusters who never once stepped foot in the mountains they wrote policies about. Aspen staggered forward and collapsed beneath a fallen tree. Luna lowered her head, torn between instinct and something she could not explain. The cub waited for her decision. Aspen had once been family, and though the wild did not forgive easily, Luna began to move toward him. The cub followed. Aspen lifted his head when Luna approached, fear and recognition burning in his eyes. His leg was twisted unnaturally, the metal jaws of a trap still locked around his ankle. Blood stained the snow. The cub sniffed the trap, confused. No fang, no claw, no natural design. A human thing, a cruel thing. Luna growled, not at Aspen, but at the iron that had done this. Emily whispered to herself, "If they get caught in another hunting trap, I swear I'm filing every report I can. This area should be protected." She thought of hearings she had watched, discussions about wildlife corridors, and even saw the term in her mind, environmental lawyer, people who could defend these mountains better than her camera ever could. Aspen whined. Luna stepped closer, teeth gripping the metal, pulling, twisting. The cub joined her, biting the chain, using strength that seemed far beyond his age. Minutes passed, long, brutal, desperate. At last, the trap snapped open. Aspen gasped and pulled his leg free, too weak to stand. The cub nudged him gently, and Luna lay beside the wounded wolf, guarding him through the night. Something ancient shifted between them. Loyalty, pain, memory. The cub didn't look away. He was learning something new. Enemies were not always enemies forever. Emily's voice journal captured the moment. Wolf, leopard, and former packmate, sharing shelter. This challenges every known concept of interspecies conflict. Survival is reshaping behavior. As dawn seeped through the trees, Aspen stood shakily. He looked at Luna, then at the cub, and without a sound slipped back toward the valley. But before disappearing, he turned once more and met the cub's eyes. Not with hatred, but with acknowledgement. The cub watched until the forest swallowed Aspen completely. Luna touched her nose to his head, and in that moment, something passed between them. Not pride, not approval, but understanding. He had chosen mercy, and the wild had witnessed it. They climbed back toward the cave, moving slowly, the horizon warming with morning light. The world around them felt changed, larger, stranger, fragile. Emily, exhausted but wired with adrenaline, typed a final note before sleeping. If humans could see what I saw tonight, we'd talk more about coexistence and less about control. Maybe we'd think differently about life, how easily it breaks, how fiercely it tries to survive. Maybe we'd take better care, buy life insurance, protect our families the way Luna protects hers. On the ridge, the cub curled beside Luna and closed his eyes. His dreams were full of wolves and iron teeth, of choices and consequences, of a future he could neither predict nor avoid. A future where he might lead, not as leopard or wolf, but as something the wild itself had rewritten.
The first storm of winter rolled in without warning. Clouds, dark and swollen, marched across Silver Ridge like a slow army. The wind howled through the trees, shaking branches and filling the air with the scent of lightning. Luna guided the young leopard, now broad-shouldered, powerful, and nearly grown, toward higher shelter. The cave was no longer enough for weather like this. They needed cover deeper in the stone, a place older than storms. The leopard moved with confidence, but something in the storm unsettled him. The wind carried more than snow. It carried the smell of humans. They were back. Emily confirmed it only minutes later on her surveillance feed. Two men, wearing heavy jackets and carrying equipment that did not belong to hikers or researchers. She zoomed in,
heart pounding. Steel traps, high-caliber rifles, and around their packs, laminated tags that read, Authorized Predator Control, Federal Contract. Emily's stomach twisted. No. She knew this program. An old legal loophole allowing contractors to kill predators if livestock was threatened, even if the predators never touched a single cow. Ranchers filed claims, insurance companies processed payouts, and somewhere in a courtroom, an agricultural attorney argued that nature needed to be managed like a business budget. It was legal, brutal, and far too easy to abuse. Lightning cracked, ripping open the sky. The storm broke. The men pushed deeper into the restricted wildland, unaware that nature was watching them from above, through the spotted eyes of a hunter raised by a wolf. The leopard's muscles tightened. He looked to Luna. She smelled the metal and danger and circled behind him, forcing him to stay low. This wasn't like the elk hunt. This was not a battle for food. This was a battle for existence. The storm thickened until the forest vanished into white curtains of snow. The men struggled to see, wiping their scopes and cursing the wind. One of them pointed at the ground. Tracks. Large, heavy, feline tracks. The leopard. Emily grabbed her phone and dialed every number she could. Wildlife enforcement, park services, even a local environmental law group she once worked with. All she got was voicemail and storm alerts. Her voice shook as she recorded a message for her research logs. Luna and the leopard are in the path of government hunters. If they find him, they'll classify him as an invasive predator. I have to try to stop this. She threw out her coat. The storm slammed into her as she stepped outside. Back on the ridge, the men set a trapline beneath a pine canopy. They strapped raw meat inside steel jaws, hammered stakes into frozen soil, and checked the safety on their rifles. The wind swallowed their voices, but Luna heard enough. She remembered Aspen's pain. She remembered exile, fangs, blood. She would not let her son be taken. The leopard moved first, silent as falling ash. He circled wide, stepping where snow cover was thick so his tracks vanished. He did not know human law or predator contracts or federal programs, but he understood territory, and this was his. The men sensed movement too late. A branch snapped, a shadow lunged, and one of them stumbled backward, firing into the storm. The shot cracked like a splitting tree. Luna charged from the opposite side, a wolf's fury in every stride. The second man swung his rifle toward her, eyes wide, but the leopard struck first. Not killing, not yet. Just enough force to knock him down, send the rifle skidding across the ice, far out of reach. Luna pinned the other, teeth bared, growl rolling like thunder. The storm swallowed everything else. Emily reached the ridge moments later, breathless, snow crusting her hair. She saw the scene, humans frozen, staring up at a wolf and a creature no science paper had ever fully described. A living challenge to everything they believed about nature. Emily raised both hands and yelled over the wind, "Back away, slowly, leave this land and do not return." The men needed no convincing. They scrambled up, grabbed nothing, and vanished into the white. Luna stepped back. The leopard eased his grip. Emily's breath trembled. She whispered, "You just defended your home." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the young leopard, the size of a mountain lion now, muscles rippling, eyes bright with something ancient and wild and new. Insurance contracts, enforcement permits, legal loopholes, none of it mattered here. The ridge did not need lawyers. The ridge had its own justice. The storm calmed hours later. Snow drifted over trap lines, burying them, erasing the last trace of human claim. Luna and the leopard returned to their shelter, moving together as one shadow. That night, as the forest slept, the storm left behind a silence that felt like a warning and a promise. The world would come again. And next time,
The wild would be ready.
Winter deepened, stitching white across every ridge and hollow. The storm that had driven the federal contractors away was only the beginning. Something darker was moving towards Silver Ridge now. Not just government hunters, but private ones. Men who didn't file paperwork or follow regulations. Men who did not care about wildlife protection, environmental laws, or the consequences of killing an animal that didn't exist in any official registry. They called themselves the Hunter Circle. Emily learned of them first. She sat at her desk, reviewing footage from motion-triggered cameras placed deep in restricted forest. At 2:17 a.m., a feed captured 6 figures unloading gear from snowmobiles, thermal scopes, steel traps, suppressors, and a tranquilizer kit. But what alarmed her most was a notebook left open beside their rifles. The drone camera zoomed in, catching 4 words that made her skin crawl. Leopard of Silver Ridge. She whispered, "They know." Her hands shook as she pulled up a protected wildlife database, searching desperately for emergency support contacts, enforcement, conservation officers, anyone. A link appeared. Wildlife Protection Legal Aid, a group of environmental attorneys known for stopping illegal trophy hunts. She bookmarked it instantly, thinking, if this escalates, I need them. On the ridge, Luna and the leopard moved through snow that rose to their chests. They hunted less now, conserving energy. The leopard used his strength to break ice on the river so Luna could drink. They slept curled together in the smallest corners of the cave to keep warm. They did not yet know they were being tracked. The Hunter Circle had already mapped migration paths, denning sites, and escape routes used by wolves and cougars. Their leader, a tall man with a scar beneath one eye, spoke with cold certainty. "We take the leopard alive. A wolf raiser, now that's a story that sells. Exotic hunting rights, private buyers. If there's insurance on livestock out here, someone will pay to see a killer removed." The leopard's existence had become a commodity. At dawn, Luna sensed change. The wind carried the smell of fuel and metal. She woke the leopard with a low rumble. He lifted his head, muscles coiled, breath steaming in the frigid air. They moved before the humans reached their trail. Hours later, boot prints crushed the snow where they had slept moments before. Emily tracked the hunters from her drone, cursing under her breath. She recorded everything: dates, coordinates, weather conditions, faces, evidence for the wildlife authorities who might finally take her seriously. She narrated through clenched teeth. "These men are not here for conservation. They're here for profit. And the law doesn't work fast enough up here. By the time agencies respond, the leopard could be gone." The hunters split into pairs. 2 set traps by the ridge. Another 2 searched along the stream. The leader and his partner followed the fresher tracks leading west. Luna and the leopard reached the meadow. Wide, exposed, dangerous, but the only way forward was across. The wind whipped at their fur as they moved, leaving dark prints against the glittering snow. Then, a crack. A gunshot, distant but unmistakable. Luna shoved the leopard toward a fallen tree. He ducked behind it just as a second shot tore through the air, spraying bark into the snow. Luna didn't flinch. She stood in full view, tail stiff, body still. The hunters weren't aiming at her. They were testing distance. The leopard's eyes narrowed. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with a rising force inside him. Something old, something born in him before memory. A wildness deeper than instinct. Emily shouted into her radio, voice breaking, "They're firing! They're firing on them!" She fumbled for the satellite phone, dialing the legal aid number she saved. A voice answered, "Wildlife Protection Legal Office. How can we help?" Emily's words tumbled out. "Unlicensed hunters, endangered hybrid animal. I need emergency intervention now." The voice answered, calm but firm. "We will file an injunction and alert Federal Wildlife Services. Stay safe. Document everything." On the ridge, Luna growled, a warning to the hunters, a command to her son. The leopard pushed against her side, silently refusing to leave. They weren't packed by blood, but they were packed by choice. The shots stopped. Silence returned. But not because the danger was gone. The hunters were repositioning. Night fell like a curtain of black glass. Snow thickened. The forest held its breath. A trap, hidden beneath fresh powder, snapped shut somewhere in the dark, followed by a cry. Wolf, not leopard. The hunters were closing the circle, inch by inch, life by life. Luna and the leopard moved again, disappearing into the timber, a gray shadow and a golden one, bound together. Emily locked the cabin door, heart pounding, whispering into her recorder. The mountain is no longer just wild. It is a battlefield. And in the deep woods, the hunters whispered to each other, "Tomorrow, we take them."
Night did not end gently on Silver Ridge. It broke into morning like a wound reopening. Wind carved through the pines, erasing tracks, scattering scent, and carrying with it the uneasy promise that something irreversible was coming. Luna and the leopard took refuge deep inside the old granite hollow. The cave had once been only a shelter, but now it felt like a fortress. The young leopard, nearly full-grown, massive-shouldered and sleek, paced restlessly, ears flicking at every branch that snapped outside. He was strong enough now to face most threats, but this enemy did not hunt like wolves or bears. It hunted with laws, traps, bullets, and greed. Emily hadn't slept. She had spent the dark hours gathering every file, every timestamp, every image that proved the hunters were operating illegally. It was evidence for the Wildlife Service and for the environmental lawyers who had promised to file an injunction. She uploaded footage, praying the storm-worn satellite signal would hold. "If the system fails them," she whispered, "the mountain will have to protect itself." But the mountain alone wouldn't be enough. Just after sunrise, she saw movement through the drone feed. Snowmobiles returning. The hunter circle was back, and this time they were armed not only with rifles, but with tranquilizers strong enough to drop a moose in seconds. They wanted the leopard alive, because rare predators meant rare buyers. The scarred leader spoke into a radio, his voice cold and certain. "We immobilize the mother if we have to. Then we transport the cat out. Buyers are ready. Insurance on the transport is handled. No mistakes." It sickened Emily to hear that word, insurance, used like a shield for killing. She thought of something she once read in a legal brief. People would insure cars, homes, even pets, but not the wilderness that kept them alive. Maybe someday, she thought, a country will protect forests the way families protect their property with home insurance. She didn't have more time to think. The hunters split into formation. On the ridge above the cave, Luna lifted her head. She sensed the machines, the metal, the hunger of men who took without needing. The leopard stepped beside her, shoulders tight, tail twitching. They would have to move now, but to move now meant crossing open snow, an easy target. Inside the cabin, Emily made a choice. She loaded her truck with emergency flares, medical supplies, and a signal device. If she could draw the hunters away, even for minutes, it might be enough for Luna and the leopard to reach the timberline. She whispered a small prayer and turned the key. The hunters reached the ridge first. Their thermal scopes swept across white landscape. A beeping tone stopped one of them. "Got heat signatures," he said. "2 bodies, cave entrance." They approached slowly, raising tranquilizer rifles. Luna moved the instant she heard the snow crunch. She shoved the leopard toward a narrow fissure in the cave wall, one only he could fit through. He hesitated, refusing to leave her. She nudged harder, eyes locked on his. A mother's command. Not in words, but in the kind of language every living thing understands. A crack of a rifle echoed. A dart hissed through the air, embedding into the snow inches from her paws. The leopard vanished into the fissure. Luna turned to face the entrance just as a flare streaked across the sky, red, blazing, loud. The hunters spun toward the signal. For a moment, confusion splintered their formation. Emily's truck barreled through the storm-twisted snowfield, engine roaring. She leaned on the horn, throwing flares out the window, forcing the hunters to look at her instead of the cave. "Get off this land," she screamed. "I have your faces on federal record. Leave now before law enforcement arrives." The hunters weren't afraid of her threat, but of what it meant. Public exposure, fines, jail, and worse. No buyer would touch a captured predator if the operation made national news. The scarred leader cursed. "Fall back. We return at night. Next time we take the cat clean." They retreated, engines tearing lines in the snow. Emily stopped only when she could no longer see them. Then she cut her engine and listened, heart slamming like a drum in her chest. Hours later, when quiet finally returned, the leopard emerged from the fissure. Luna nudged his cheek, exhausted but standing. He pressed his head against hers, and for a moment the world shrunk to the space they shared. Breath, heartbeat, warmth. Emily watched from a distance, breath fogging the air. She captured one last recording. They survived another hunt, but this isn't the end. The hunters will return, and when they do, the law may not be enough. She closed her notebook and looked at the wild stretch of ridge. "I'll protect you," she whispered, "whatever it takes. Not as a scientist, not as a witness, but as something the wilderness rarely had on its side, a human willing to fight for it."
The last snow of the season melted slowly across Silver Ridge, revealing stone, river, and the dark green of returning life. Weeks passed without the sound of traps or engines. The hunter circle had not shown themselves again, not since Emily had sent their identities, footage, and coordinates directly to federal wildlife officers and a team of environmental attorneys who handled emergency conservation cases. The threat had not vanished, but it was no longer closing in. Something else had changed too. The young leopard was no longer young. He stood now at the crest of the ridge, massive and silent, fur marked with rosettes as bright as embers against snow. His shoulders had broadened, muscles shifting beneath his coat when he walked. When he paused, the entire forest seemed to hold its breath. And Luna, older, slower, silver gathering around her muzzle, watched him with the same unshakable devotion she had given him when he fit between her paws. They no longer slept in the cave every night. The leopard traveled farther now, learning the balance of his two natures. Sometimes he hunted alone, disappearing for days. Sometimes he returned with food, dropping it at Luna's feet, the way a wolf would honor its pack. He had become more than she could have ever imagined. But the wild does not allow a creature to grow without testing what that growth means. One quiet morning, the ridge erupted with the panicked shrieks of elk. Emily saw the commotion first through her drone. A massive black bear, thin from winter, desperate, charging into a herd near the riverbank. The animals scattered, but a calf stumbled in the icy water. The bear closed in. Luna was already running. Her paws tore across the softening snow. She was fast, faster than she had been in months, but not fast enough. The bear was closing on the calf. Luna growled, pushing herself harder. Her age showed now in her breath, the strain in her steps. The leopard appeared like a shadow cut loose from the trees. He moved with a power that felt unreal, a union of wolf endurance and feline precision. His roar, deep, wild, shocking, rolled through the valley, a sound no creature had ever heard before. The bear froze, startled. The leopard stepped between it and the calf, tail lashing, muscles coiled. The bear swiped first. The leopard ducked, countering with a strike so forceful it sent the bear stumbling. Again the bear attacked, and again the leopard met him head-on. Snow churned beneath them, earth and fur flying. Luna paced at the edge of the fight, snarling, ready to strike if her son fell. But he did not fell. At last the bear, panting and bleeding from the shoulder, backed away. It turned and fled into the trees.
Luna pushed her head against the leopard's chest, trembling, not from fear, but from pride. Emily, breathless, whispered into her recorder, "He's not just a predator, he's a protector, a guardian of this ridge." She realized something then, a truth humans often forget. The wild protects itself when we stop breaking it. Maybe, someday, she thought, we would treat the land the way families protect their homes, with life insurance, health insurance, or even pet insurance, things people consider essential, while the wilderness that sustains those lives is left uninsured, undefended. Maybe that could change. Maybe it had already begun to. Spring arrived. Magnus and the wolf pack returned to the ridge, not to challenge, but to watch. They kept their distance at first, uncertain. But when the leopard approached, they did not bare their teeth. Aspen stepped forward and bowed his head. The pack accepted him, not as wolf, not as leopard, but something new, a bridge between worlds. Luna lay on a sun-warmed rock, eyes half closed. The leopard rested beside her, his tail curled over her paws. Emily recorded from afar, describing a moment she knew would change her field forever. A female wolf adopted a leopard cub, and what he became defies every law we believed unbreakable. The forest breeze carried birdsong through the valley. No engines, no gunfire, no traps. For the first time, Silver Ridge felt whole. Luna exhaled, slow and peaceful. The leopard lowered his head beside hers. She had raised him for this, not to be feared, not to be hunted, but to rule his place in the world without bowing to anyone's definition of what he should be. Some stories do not end. They simply stop being watched. But the mountain remembers. And somewhere deep within the wild forests of the American Northwest, wolves still run beside spotted shadows at dusk, and travelers sometimes speak of a sound unlike they've ever heard before. Half growl, half roar, echoing through the pines, guarding the land long after the world thought it knew every secret the wild had left. The legend of the wolf-raised leopard has only just begun.